I'm Jack Ruston, welcome to Ruston's Boneyard. Christmas has come and gone, leaving most of us feeling in need of a bit of a reset. But also, it's January, it's cold, and we're craving something comforting, something warming. So what we're going to make today is a chili chuck roast, but with a light, zesty Mexican cabbage slaw that's just going to cut through some of the richness of that meat. So first thing to do, we need to season and sear our beef. Now, this is quite a big piece of this lovely chuck roast we've got here. And we're going to need a lot of salt because there's only a small amount of the external seasoned crust versus all that internal meat. So I'm going to be quite generous, and I've got this Maldon salt here, and I'm really going to kind of go to town on this. I'm just going to kind of rub it in with one hand and just sort of put fistfuls of it on with the other. It is possible to put too much on, but it's not easy. It's a bit like trying to hit your daily protein target. If you're really dedicated, you could overshoot it, but the chances are you're gonna underseason it rather than overseason it. So look, here we go. We've got a hot skillet. I've just been heating this on my hob. I've got some beef tallow here. There's a good piece. What we want here is this deep pool of tallow. It's the tallow that sears the meat, not the skillet. I'm gonna get our beef. I'm just going to chuck it in here. I'm going to put this back on the heat. Now the first thing that's going to happen when we put that cold meat into the hot tallow is that it's going to lose some temperature. So when you put it back on the heat, crank it up full. But we do need to keep a bit of an eye on it because in fact you don't want it cranked full blast on a really big burner for a long time. What will happen is that the fat will actually start to burn and it'll kind of blacken, which we don't really want. So we need to keep an eye on it, and it's really going to depend on your hob. You know, if you've got one of these really powerful burners, you might need to turn it down a little bit. If it's a smaller burner, you may just keep it on full whack. Keep an eye on things. While that's going on, let's prepare the chili base, the sort of braising liquor that we're going to cook this meat in. So what we're going to do is start with an onion. Let's just take the end off, cut it in half, peel the outer layers away, over the top of the onion half in a fan. We go once through the middle sideways, then three fingers in a row, thumb behind, and just finely dice. So this onion is going to go into our casserole. I've got one of these Le Creuset casseroles. Use whatever you've got, but a cast iron casserole is a wonderful investment. And we're going to put some tallow into this with the onion, and we're just going to pop it on a low heat to soften. Now, while that onion's softening, let's have a look and see what's happening here with the beef. Look, we're getting a nice crust here. Let's get it back on. We just want to be patient. We've got a lot of sides to cover here. We don't want to rush this process and under-sear it. There's a lot of flavour in this crust. This is the main way that we're going to get natural flavour into this beef. And those of you who are carnivore, you know, you won't want to be doing all these tomatoes and chili and all this stuff. If you're just making a chuck roast, it's salt and this reaction between the fat and the meat. What's happening is the hot fat is causing the liquids, the myoglobin, to come to cook out of the meat, and as it hits the surface, it immediately evaporates, leaving this crust on the surface. So, you know, there's a lot of flavour here. This is what we want to encourage. So that softening onion, we're going to add a few other things. I've got some lovely pancetta here. Just take the rind off for this. We just want little soft pieces. And what this is going to do is provide some wonderful depth of flavour and smokiness. So how much of this? It doesn't matter. A few pieces, a bit more, whatever you've got. You've got a little head of garlic here. All I'm going to do is just cut this straight down the middle. And I'm just going to chuck this whole piece in like this. It's time to check our beef again. Let's have a look. Lovely, look, nice colour developing there. Let's go down on this edge now. Here's our base starting to develop here. We've got our garlic, our pancetta. This is all just cooking off nicely. I'm going to put a few spices in here too. Dried oregano, some, not loads, not none, dried sage, a good pinch, maybe two, a couple of bay leaves. If you don't have fresh bay, don't worry, it's just a nice thing. Dried cumin, a kind of heaped teaspoon. Now this is chipotle. It's smoked chili, so it has an amazing flavour. A heaped teaspoon or so, maybe a touch more. Now this is a very hot habanero. Just the tip of a teaspoon or a tip of a knife blade. It's going to give me a very fast heat. It's going to flash up hot and then it's going to die away very quickly. Now we've got cinnamon, kind of a flat teaspoon of cinnamon. I often prefer to use a cinnamon stick in these kind of sauces, but I couldn't get one. If you can't get things, you've just got to work with what you can do, with what you can get. We're just going to mix these spices through, and then we're going to get them back on the heat. Now I've got these nice fresh tomatoes on the vine here, and what we're going to do is take the skins off. Tomato skins in these kind of sauces, they don't just break down into nothing like the tomatoes do. They tend to float around in there in a not very nice way. Now what we do is just take off any stalks, take a sharp knife and just make a little cross in the skin. You can do it both sides or just one side, just a little X. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover them with boiling water from our kettle, and the skins are just going to peel off, just by magic. I want to make sure that they're just submerged in there. And we're just going to leave them for a couple of minutes just to let that skin separate. We've got this lovely aromatic kind of pancetta, garlic, spice base developing here. But we need to be careful, we can burn this if we don't watch it. Equally, let's see what's going on with the beef. Where are my grabbers? Look, we've got this beautiful crust developing here. Want to keep turning this, finding the bits where it needs to sear a little more. And sometimes you might have to sort of hold it up for a bit. It's a bit of a pain. You can see basically the skin's just starting to fall off now. And we can just peel it away like this. If they're not coming off, it's because you haven't left them quite long enough in the hot water. We're just going to chop these tomatoes roughly into chunks. They're going to totally break down, so they don't need to be pretty. Just like that, that's fine. And you may be wondering why I'm not using canned tomatoes. Honestly, often I do. But I'm also aware that the less processing of our ingredients, usually the better for our health. I mean, there may be stuff in the lining of those cans that we don't really want to be eating. If I've got time, if I can be bothered to do it, I'm going to use fresh tomatoes. If you don't want to do that, that's totally cool. Get a couple of cans. Let's pop our tomatoes in. Here we go. Try and get all the liquid. What we're really looking for here is, as much as the tomato flavour, is a bit of water. We might actually add a bit as well. Pop it back on the heat, let it just start stewing down, and let's have another look at the beef. Look, we're getting a really deep crust on this now. We're not miles away from it being done, but this is all adding flavour. We don't want to burn it, we're just looking for the most intense crust that we can form. So look, here we go. Lovely golden depth on this crust. And we've got our nice Baste, which is just the chili base, which is just starting to kind of meld together in this nice kind of way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little kind of hole in the bottom, and we're just going to hoik this in, shove it right down in there. I'm just going to add an extra splash of water from my kettle here. I'm not looking to sort of submerge this, but I don't want it to dry out. We do have sugars in the form of onion and tomato in this sauce, and when I put this in the oven, I don't want it just immediately losing volume on the liquid and then beginning to burn, on the bottom of the pan. I'm going to cook this reasonably hot. We're going to put the lid on, and we're going to put it in a 180 degrees oven. That's about 350 Fahrenheit. So, you know, we're being somewhat aggressive, and if it wasn't for the liquid and the lid on, then, you know, we'd be prone to burning this. So we need to just be mindful of how much liquid is in there. And while it braises away in there, we're going to keep a little bit of a weather eye on it just to make sure that it's not drying out. So, lid, bang, and into the oven. It's going to take about 3 hours. It might take a little bit more, it might take a little bit less, depending on the size and depending on the temperature. While that's braising away, let's make this nice, zesty Mexican cabbage slaw. You know, at this time of year, the lettuces can be not up to much sometimes. So cabbage is a nice thing to use to give ourselves some of this kind of freshness. Now what we're going to do is just take some of this pointed cabbage. This is sometimes called sweet cabbage. We're just going to remove any outer layers that we don't like the look of, and just slice it thinly like this. And then something with a little bit more colour and a little bit more crunch. We've got a red cabbage here. Again, thin slices like this. Looking for a bit of crisp crunch in on top. We're going to season the cabbage with plenty of salt. Let's add some red onion. Just going to go in half, very thin, half rounds like this. You can use shallots for this or red onion. That's going to add some fresh and piquant flavour. Lime juice. Let's just half our lime, squeeze that over. Get lots of that nice zesty lime in there. You know, the flavours that really make these kinds of things work are lime, chilli, cilantro. And talking of which, here's some nice fresh cilantro that I've washed. Let's just take a big bunch of this, and we're just gonna finely chop the leaves. It doesn't matter if we get a few little bits of stalk in there. We don't need to be kind of religious about trimming them up. And just finely chop cilantro in, and then fresh red chili, nice thin diagonal slices. Not too much, we don't want it to be burning hot, but it's lovely to have those little bursts of heat and a nice red colour. Now, a slug of good olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. Use the best stuff you can get. It depends on where you are. Sometimes in the States, the olive oil has vegetable oil mixed into it. We're slightly luckier in Europe in that respect, but add a good slug of something decent. Just mix it through, work it together, break up any little clumps of that cabbage. And you know, what you've got there is a beautiful, fresh, kind of tangy, light, crunchy slaw that we can use to really sort of offset the thick intensity of the beef. So put that to one side in the fridge. Now periodically we just want to take our beef out of the oven and just make sure that it's not getting too dry. You might want to baste a little bit of our liquid over the top here. Just make sure that it's all bubbling away beautifully without drying out or getting stuck at the bottom or anything. If you do find it's a little dry, just add a little bit more water. So here we go, it's looking fabulous. Back in the oven. Okie dokie. So here we go, this has been in for 3 hours, and I've periodically just basted over the top of it, and we've got this lovely, slightly jiggly texture now, which lets me know that that's cooked, that's broken down. You know, the liquid is very reduced. There's no sort of water in it anymore. There's just this kind of slightly thicker, tomatoey, garlicky texture of this chili that we've got on here. Now, it's not the most beautiful thing to look at, but it's definitely the most beautiful thing to taste. And that's really what we're talking about this time of year. You know, it's horrible outside, it's freezing cold. We just want something nice and comforting and delicious. But at the same time, you know, we're trying not to go in for the stodge because we're all trying to recalibrate a bit after Christmas. I'm just gonna let this kind of cool down a little bit, and I'm gonna get my garnish prepped. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Let's just pop some of this on the plate here. Look at these delicious chunks of beef coming out of here. Just gonna lift these out. It would be great if I could get it out in one piece, but it's just falling to pieces, which frankly is a good sign. I'm just gonna pop a couple of these lovely bits of braised beef onto here. And what we can do is we can spoon over a little bit of our sauce. Now watch out, because we have got bay leaves in here. We have got some kind of structural bits from the garlic. Glorious. Now, lime wedges. Here's a tip. When you serve this, right before you serve it, squeeze some lime over the meat. And what that does is when people take a bite, they are going to get their taste buds opened up by the acid, the citric acid in the lime, and in will flood all that flavour of chili. It's absolutely delicious. We're going to scatter over a few cilantro leaves, which just gives it a really nice fresh look, and it also obviously adds to the flavour. We've got a couple of bits of red chilli just to go on the top, and a couple of bits of red onion, which again just provide this really nice look to the dish. And there it is. It looks stunning. It's going to taste absolutely amazing. It's comforting, but it's also kind of light. Give it a go. Take a picture, stick it on Instagram, tag me at Ruston's Boneyard. I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to see what is going on in your kitchen. For now, keep cooking and Happy New Year.